Well, thank you.
Welcome, everybody.
Honorable Chairs Jim Bell and Jimmy Gomez and esteemed members of the conference committee. I'm Jim Arp with the California Alliance for Jobs. I'm here speaking on behalf of 2,000 contractors and more than 60,000 union construction workers who build and rehabilitate California's roads, bridges, water systems, and other critical infrastructure that we all rely upon every day. Although I'm not here speaking today on behalf of the California Transportation Commission, I do have the privilege of serving as a commissioner on that body with my esteemed colleague Lucy Dunn, who is sitting beside me and currently serving as chair, and she will be addressing you this morning as well. I also want to acknowledge Dan Hemmick, who is a member of our industry and runs a very reputable contracting firm that does a lot of this work. Thank you for the opportunity to spend these few minutes discussing a critical issue. How does the state of California adequately maintain and rehabilitate more than 190,000 miles of streets, roads, and highways with a combined annual funding shortfall at both state and local levels that exceed $13 billion a year? The California Alliance for Jobs, and indeed our entire industry, has worked unceasingly for the last 3 years to shine a spotlight on our failing transportation infrastructure in an effort to inform the legislature and the administration and prod all parties into taking action on crafting a solution. That journey has been as rough as the very roads that we're trying to fix. But we view this conference committee as a real milestone in that process and are gratified to be here today. Other members of this panel will revisit the scope of the problem that California is facing. Rather than preempt their remarks, I would like to focus just for a few minutes on the status of where we see this discussion today and what hopefully will be the product of the conference committee moving forward. In January of this year, the governor called for the legislature to work with him and all interested parties to craft a solution to what he described as a $59 billion failure in our state transportation system. It was a daunting number, but actually the administration was a little light on this total scope of the problem, since it was focused at the time only on the state system and not on the thousands of miles of streets and roads operated by the cities and counties, which are also suffering an additional $78 billion in deferred maintenance. At the same time, the California Alliance for Jobs, in partnership with Transportation California, launched what ultimately evolved into 5 months of public opinion research to drill down into voter attitudes on the condition of our roads and what is needed to bring them up to a state of good repair. In short, the results of that work, which I've reported on more extensively in previous hearings, revealed 3 things. One, that voters are acutely aware that our roads are falling apart because they live with that reality every day of their lives. Number 2, when presented with factual information about how our transportation system is funded, they concede that current funding levels are inadequate. And 3, they will accept modest increases in a range of user fees if there are guarantees the money will be used for its intended purpose and if agencies responsible for operating our transportation system are held accountable for improving performance and efficiencies. The results of our research help to inform a number of our legislators who have been committed to achieving a transportation funding solution this year. In February, Assembly Speaker Toni Atkins demonstrated her leadership and commitment to achieving a transportation funding solution by unveiling a proposal centered on a new road user charge that would net about $2 billion in new revenue dedicated to road maintenance and rehabilitation. Her dedication to achieving a solution this year has been unwavering. Senator Bell, you followed up with a more comprehensive package that included significant reforms combined with a blend of modest user fees that would generate closer to $4.3 billion in annual revenue. We've been grateful for the persistent, thoughtful, and collaborative effort that you have expended on this issue. Your legislation has many elements that continue to merit serious consideration. Our organization and most of the entities that joined the Fix Our Roads coalition that I helped to form this last summer have all expressed support for your bill. In late June, the governor called for an extraordinary session on transportation, which laid the groundwork for the conference committee that is now convened. In July, the California Alliance for Jobs, along with the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties, jointly launched the Fix Our Roads Coalition, which galvanized a broad swath of business and labor organizations, regional and local transportation agencies, all committed to doing everything within our power to help facilitate a robust and productive dialogue within the arena of this special legislative session. The Fix Our Road Coalition in August presented 7 priorities outlining a combination of reforms and new revenue that we believe are essential elements to any solution. I've attached a copy of that document to this presentation. It has been well vetted throughout the state, and hopefully you have seen it before. In early September, the governor released a proposal that, while more constrained fiscally than either Senator Bell's or our coalition's proposals, was responsive to all 7 coalition priorities, and most significantly, put some serious reforms on the table. And you've heard those today from Secretary Kelly. I can state unequivocally, I've been around this for quite a while now, I can state unequivocally that some of these reforms, for instance, doubling the amount of consulting and engineering work to be contracted out at Caltrans, CEQA streamlining of road rehab projects, extending public-private partnerships for 10 years, are things that many in the transportation community have advocated for years but have never achieved. They are sweeping, they're landmark changes. So that brings us to here and now, looking at each other with squinty eyes trying to scope out the next move. Here's what I hope the next move would look like. Because of who he is and his rather remarkable track record for getting big, difficult political tasks done, we do recommend that the governor's proposal be the vehicle around which negotiations should commence. I say commence because, frankly, up to this point, there have been opinions, public statements, television interviews, radio talk shows, but there have been no negotiations. The purpose of this conference committee is to move beyond all that rhetoric and negotiate a deal that will garner enough bipartisan votes to pass through the legislature, be signed by the governor, and, of course, actually address our infrastructure problem in a significant way. I come from a world where employers, unions, and workers negotiate wages, benefits, work rules, just about everything. It's called collective bargaining. When a contract is completed, everyone is tired and grumpy. They may have found something in the contract to like. They certainly can point to stuff they don't like. No one feels like a total winner. That is the definition of success. I encourage you to strive for that kind of success. This final package will probably look different than what the governor has put on the table. But let's use it for what it is, a pretty well thought out template to work from. In conclusion, I urge everyone on this committee to accept the reality that there are no Republican or Democrat roads. There is just a crumbling transportation system that all of your constituents are enduring every day. It is incumbent upon us all to figure out a way to fix it, or the cost will be excruciatingly higher if we continue to delay. Thanks for letting me have the time to speak to you.
Thank you. I think Lucy Dunn is next. Lucy, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Committee. I really appreciate your work. Lucy Dunn, Chair of the California Transportation Commission this year, and also President and CEO of the Orange County Business Council. First, wearing my hat as chair of CTC, it is our privilege and duty under law to be the independent advisor to the legislature and to the governor on issues of transportation. We are the ones that review the funding proposals that come through, the projects that come through from local and state departments. We try to make sure that they're held accountable to the rules and the regs that are before them. And we notice that year after year now, certainly in my, going on 8 years on the commission, the funding continues to decrease. It is a significant issue, a serious issue for advancing. Even, for example, in the 6-county Southern California area, what we've discovered, the funding now, 11% of the funding in Southern California comes from the feds, 13% from the state, 75%, 76% of our transportation funding comes from our own local sales tax measures, not from state or federal sources, because our locals have figured that the state hasn't and the feds haven't been responsive. And in that 6 county, by the way, that includes Ventura, that has no sales tax measure, completely reliant upon feds and the state for delivery of their transportation system. So we look at this and take our charge very seriously at the Commission, and really are ecstatic about your getting together and tackling these tough issues. We know that additional resources and revenues are needed at the state level. They need to be protected so that they're not diverted for other purposes. We argue all the time about returning $1 billion of truck weight fees to transportation, but we get the fact we can't have $1 billion hole in our state budget. It's critically important. So we've got to figure that out. It's a tough issue. We have to figure that out. We also know that the funding needs to be reliable and predictable. Transportation goes on forever, right? It's a multi-year process. It has to be ongoing. It has to be substantial. We're looking at billions of dollars here in need, $59 billion, I think the governor suggested, just for repairs and maintenance. That's not new capacity. That's not an increase in population. So we're counting on new technology, innovative transportation systems in the future. But right now, today, we need that funding mechanism for repairs. We need it today. It has to be shared equitably between our cities, counties, and the state, and it has to address trade corridors and goods movement, as the transportation system is essential for a growing, thriving California economy. So that's the revenue side of it. But I will share with you that this commission has stated unequivocally that the reforms that you are contemplating have to be inextricably linked to that revenue proposal. There is no question that, and I say this with great affection, whether it's true or not, but Caltrans, in the public's mind, probably has the approval rating of Congress right now, which is just miserably the lowest in all of history. So if we're going to do good revenue sources that make sense, we also need to do good reforms that go with this process. And some of those, obviously, Jim mentioned, are the innovative, proven financing opportunities that have taken place in other jurisdictions, like public-private partnership, like design build. We've got extraordinary examples of success in time and cost savings in design build in Orange County alone. Streamlining and permitting timelines for actions required by state agencies. Clearly, time is money. Modernizing CEQA. How long do we have to talk about this before we actually do it? There is no reason that projects can't be streamlined within the corridors that they're already building in where CEQA already happened. Let's just make it happen. Advanced environmental mitigation was mentioned as part of the governor's proposal, a proven success record as well in Orange County, and continuing Caltrans project delivery processes and improvement efficiencies. They're already trying to do that. We're seeing it now. Contracting out is critically important. Why should we not allow more private sector into the system so that Caltrans doesn't have to increase their employee, long-time permanent employee base when we have ebb and flow of project needs. So contracting out makes sense as a modernized way. And then one of my personal favorites that folks know is expediting the state's review of new products. If I know another state has a product that can extend the life of a bridge deck from 20 years to 120 years, but it's still going through a Caltrans review process and other states are using it, that's tax dollars saved if we can figure out if, with our earthquakes, with our weather, with the rest of the stuff that we have here, can we expedite new product, new technology, innovation that is already being used in other states and around the world in California. It makes sense. It extends those tax dollars even further. Now, I would also share with you on accountability. We already have a very strong track record in one program with Prop B where we've done it. We took and actually looked at that $12 billion that was given to us by the voters for Prop 1B, and promises made were kept under that. 98% of those dollars actually went to our road system, to our streets, highways, and roads. And only 2 cents went to project administration. We've got a track record in the state that folks don't realize. We also leveraged more than $12 billion from that Prop 1B. We leveraged it with an additional $25 billion in federal, local, and private dollars in the worst economy in the history of the nation, to create over 500,000 jobs. And so, again, some of the measures that were used in accountability that we've already got a track record of success working with Caltrans, working with our local agencies on, we can use these as well to make it work. So I would share with you that those reforms that you are looking at, and many of them that you've already heard today, are critically important to the success of moving forward. And so then, wearing my OCBC hat, taking off my CTC hat, my business council hat, and I'm also a founding co-chair of the REAL Coalition, Regional Economic Association Leadership, over 22 of the largest business groups in the state, from San Francisco to San Diego. We sort of look at this like the water bond. You know, we know there's a deal to be done here. We don't want to dictate how the deal is. We know it has to include revenue and reforms. In the business community, we need a deal. And we would just encourage you to use us as resources, your business community, because we need you to succeed. If we can't move people and goods, we can't thrive. We can't grow our businesses, and we don't have a strong economy for California. California prides itself on a state that acts like a nation. This is where we could be a leader in doing innovative work and actually teaching Congress a thing or two for all of the delays that they have imposed on us on their federal highways. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And again, we're here to be a resource for you.
Thank you, Lucy Dunn, and Jennifer Whiting is next. Jennifer.
Good morning, honorable chairs and members of the committee. Thank you so much for Jennifer Whiting on behalf of the League of California Cities, also speaking today on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. I wanted to start by thanking you all for being here today. I know this is the usual time of year for you to be in your districts working with your constituents, but this is truly a statewide crisis, and we appreciate you taking the time, not just today and at the next hearing, but all of the time you're going to put into this over the next few months, because this is not an easy task we have all taken on, and cities and counties include themselves in the discussion. We want to work with you to find a solution. Several times this year, we have presented the results of the most recent California statewide local streets and roads needs assessment, and I don't want to spend a lot of time rehashing those results, but I do want to reiterate just a few data points to frame the remainder of my comments. And I know there are a lot of numbers already in this discussion. It's very easy to let your head spin with them. So I brought along a handout with just a few charts to help simplify my part of the discussion. You should have them in a handout that looks like this. The local streets and road system is a huge part of California's network. More than 80% of California's roads are owned by cities and counties, and the system is experiencing a huge shortfall over the next 10 years, totaling $78.3 billion to bring it up to best management practices. And that includes pavement on the streets and roads, as well as essential components of the system. We know it's a big number. In fact, it's probably bigger than big. And it's just the local system. It doesn't include the state system needs. We're not going to fix the problem with just reforms or just new revenues or just late fees or just the state general fund or just local initiatives. It's going to take a combination of solutions. Earlier this year, the League and CSAC were pleased to be able to support Senator Bell's revenue proposal. It meets many of the principles our organizations and members adopted 3 and 4 years ago when this discussion started for any new transportation revenues. It focuses on system preservation and maintenance. It would incorporate an all-users-based system. It provides a unified statewide solution. It distributes the revenues in an equitable manner. And it includes accountability requirements for both the state and local systems. Likewise, the League and CSAC are pleased to be able to support some of the proposals offered by the Republican caucuses. First and foremost, we strongly believe that any fees or taxes that are imposed for transportation purposes should receive constitutional protections. Our members also support reforms that will shorten project delivery timelines and decrease project costs. We've spent a lot of time talking about that today. We support the use of public-private partnerships and exempting projects within the existing right-of-way from CEQA. There are other proposals, too, that our members will be reviewing during our next round of policy committee processes. Our internal policy committee processes. A lot of the reforms that have been put on the table actually won't directly impact cities and counties, so we don't have current policy on those. But given the whole discussion that is going on, we've decided to go ahead and take a look at those and see if we can broaden our policy base and join in other parts of the discussion. As you've already heard, over the summer recess, the League and CSAC joined together with many other transportation stakeholders to try to outline a possible compromise position. Out of that came the Fix Our Roads Coalition. And I can't remember the last time so many diverse stakeholders came together to support one framework. And then in September, we saw the governor issue a proposed framework that incorporates many of the principles our individual organizations and the Fix Our Roads Coalition have outlined. It makes a significant investment in the transportation system. It maximizes accountability and makes better use of already existing funding. It streamlines project delivery. It provides constitutional protections for the revenues it raises. It repays outstanding loans from transportation accounts, and it includes Caltrans reforms. The governor's framework is the first formal proposal that we saw that brings together the revenues and reforms in one place. And we agree with previous speakers. At the very minimum, it should be considered as a foundation for your future negotiations. We've spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders, legislators, and the governor's administration about how to solve this crisis we're facing, and it is a crisis that must be addressed now. The condition of our local streets and roads system is deteriorating. The first time the needs assessment was completed was in 2008, and the statewide pavement condition, or PCI, was at 68. By last year, that number had fallen to 66. At first glance, a fall from 68 to 66 over that time period doesn't seem to be a big deal. But however, if you look at the slide on page 3, you'll see why we are concerned. The white line on the chart is the average lifetime of a local street. As you can see, 66 is at the top of a very steep decline. And keep in mind that in that same time period, we have had significant one-time investment through Prop 1B and the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Without additional and ongoing investment now, our pavements are going to be deteriorating at a much faster rate. As you can see on the next slide, if we continue current funding levels with no major policy changes, in 10 years, the pavement condition index on the local system will drop to 55, which is considered poor on the engineering scale. And the number of failed roads will grow from 6.2% of the local system to 25% of the local system. That fast decline will be reflected in dollars also. If we wait just 5 years to address this problem, the price tag to bring the local system up to par will be $11 billion than if we address it today. Let me say it again. 5 years costs us $11 billion. 10 years costs us $21 billion. If we think the funding deficit is big today, it's nothing compared to what we will face if we don't quickly act on and make significant additional investments. We've talked a lot, the League, CSAC, has talked a lot with you all this year about revenues. Before I close, I want to talk a little bit more about the reform side, because some people have told me that they feel like we're ignoring that, and that's actually not the case. Cities and counties realize that we can't ask for more funding unless we're doing our part to reduce costs with the current dollars. Cities and counties have been working to adopt new technologies and products and processes that were just discussed that reduce costs. And for the most part, we have the flexibility to do that without legislation, so it doesn't necessarily come to your attention. You may be aware of what your local cities and counties are doing, but we don't talk a lot about it statewide. Next week at the hearing, we will be bringing in a public works director to discuss those new technologies with you. There are a lot of ideas on the table for consideration. The governor moved the conversation forward in September by taking several ideas and putting them in one proposal. And now the ball has been put in your court. The task seems daunting, but it's not impossible, and it's absolutely necessary. We encourage you to come together, work together to put together a package that will pass the legislature quickly. Cities and counties stand ready to support you, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Kristen Connolly is next.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bell, Co-Chair Gomez, honorable members of the committee. My name is Kristen Connolly. I'm the president and CEO of the East Bay Leadership Council, a regional business organization representing 300 employers of all sizes in Contra Costa and Alameda counties. I am proud to be a friend and colleague of Lucy Dunn's in the REAL Coalition, which works statewide on issues of importance, and want to echo her message that there is a deal to be done, and the business community stands ready to be helpful and to be your partner in helping you to get there. I just want to acknowledge Chairman Bell. It was terrific that you recently came to Walnut Creek to talk about some of these important issues. Many of our members were there and appreciated your time. And Co-Chair Gomez, just thank you for the acknowledgement to no longer kick the can down the road. There are many, many, many lost opportunities because that has happened for far too long. The East Bay Leadership Council strongly supports the need for a comprehensive, reliable, sustainable funding package from the state level. We have been actively engaged in the efforts, both in Contra Costa and Alameda counties, being two self-help counties that have recently gone back to voters and asked for more money, in Alameda successfully last year, and are actively engaged in Contra Costa, gearing up for potentially next year, because there is such a dire need. And we look to you as our leadership in the state to try and help stem the tide. So I too want to again echo. We have joined the Fix Our Roads Coalition. We're very glad to do that this summer, and really appreciate Jim's leadership and the League of Cities with CSAC to do that. We certainly understand the value of fiscal prudence, but recognize that it's essential that we have a safe and efficient transportation infrastructure. You well understand over the last several years that the spending from federal and state sources has dwindled in real terms in our community in the East Bay. We are reliant on 65% local support because of our local sales tax measures. We strongly believe that any funding package should be split between state and local government, upgrade our goods movement infrastructure, address the issues of deferred maintenance, and expand system capacity. We support we support moderate increases to a number of taxes if that's how we get over the finish line, including vehicle registration and license fees and inflation indexing. Appreciate mention of that. It should also be guided by the principle that everyone who benefits from the system should in some way contribute to funding of the system. I do want to take a moment, though, to get specific about some of the reforms, because I share the message from the Transportation Commission that Lucy was articulating earlier about the need to improve what we do and improve performance and get more from every dollar. If we're going to be asking more from the citizens of California, we certainly need to make sure that we're getting it. So I wanted specifically mention a few reform proposals that I hope you take into consideration as you do this important work in a bipartisan fashion. The legislature currently prevents Caltrans from utilizing consultant services for more than 10% of its design engineering activities through the budgetal approval process. We would hope that you could lower that cap and give more flexibility, as we heard earlier, in terms of being able to respond to the need. Consider, and some of these have been proposals that have not made it through the legislature, but to consider establishing an Office of the Inspector General to oversee Caltrans and address issues of waste, fraud, and malfeasance. It's important that the voters of California have more trust in what Caltrans is doing. Provide Caltrans with the authority to hire personnel on the basis of a multi-year time horizon. Caltrans hiring is currently controlled by the annual budget process, and this one-year constraint, along with contracting out limitations to make proper resource leveling out, it makes proper resource leveling difficult when projects span multiple years. We hope that can change. Various resource agencies, whether it's CARB, the Regional Quality Control Boards, Fish and Wildlife, often place unreasonable and expensive mitigation impact requirements on Caltrans projects, increasing project cost and causing delays. Action to provide Caltrans with protection against such demands would lower project costs and staffing needs. We're also very interested in the discussion mentioned earlier about advanced mitigation, as has been successful in Orange County. We want to hope that you would consider to establish that projects which appear prima facie as eligible for categorical CEQA exemptions are in fact exempt and do not require further analysis or justification, and that you consider to widen the definition of operational improvements to include all projects within the existing footprint of transportation infrastructure and provide a statutory CEQA exemption to such projects. That was mentioned as part of the proposal earlier today. Just a couple more I would like to mention. Provide Caltrans with authority to make environmental findings justified by existing state statute, even where opposed by other resource agencies, and want to echo the support mentioned earlier for the need to, or the benefit of being able to conduct NEPA and CEQA analysis and compliance concurrently. We think it's important to make permanent Caltrans authority to enter into public-private partnerships in order to leverage private investment for public benefit and decrease the cost of important projects to taxpayers. And finally, I want to think about considering how to make good movements projects that achieve greenhouse gas reductions eligible for funding under the cap and trade program, in addition to the other proposals suggested related to cap and trade dollars. I just want to again emphasize the importance of getting to a solution and getting to the deal that can be done here. Because the failure to do this has cost too many Californians money. It's increasing cost to our businesses. It's increasing pollution and suppressing job growth. And I thank you for your time.